Good morning, everybody, and hello to the new faces that I see this morning. Thank you for joining us. I'm now going to be introducing the next speaker. So, born and brought up in Mumbai, India, Ervad Jimmy Kushru Madon moved to the United Kingdom in 2010. He procured a first-class honors degree in computing from the University of East London and is currently pursuing part-time Master of Science in Software Engineering at the University of Oxford. He has worked as a software engineer for the past 7 years and enjoys transferring his passion for the subject by giving part-time lectures at various universities in the UK. He was an ordained priest at the age of 12 and has been invited to carry out liturgical ceremonies for the Zoroastrian community in 5 continents. As the youth coordinator for the World Zoroastrian Organization and the secretary for the Young Zoroastrians of the UK, he actively helps in organizing community events in the UK. He further volunteers to teach at religious educational classes in London for kids and parents alike. He was the opening keynote speaker at the 6th World Zoroastrian Youth Congress in New Zealand in 2015. Today, he aims to present how a 3,500-year-old philosophy has and can still help us take good decisions in our careers, our relationships, or even smaller things like our academics, or when we wanted to give up on the musical instrument we were frustrated at failing at. We all call ourselves Zoroastrian, but how many of us understand the message of Zarathushtra in the Gathas, and how many of us can apply it in our daily life? The previous generations were successful on passing our Parsi Irani culture, customs, and traditions, but not quite the core philosophy of the religion beyond the cliché, good thoughts, good words, and good deeds paradigm. His presentation promises to break down the concepts in the Gathas for us to choose and use Zoroastrianism. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Jimmy Madon to the stage. Thank you.
So thank you very much for that kind introduction. I think those of you who already know me already know that I love to talk. Those of you who don't will realize this in the next 1 hour. It is a bit funny, but that's what made me become a part-time lecturer as well, because I thought if I could get paid to talk, that would be just a win-win, right? But then I recollect some of my university lecturers being paid the same amount even though they outsourced their presentations to some very qualified members in the audience. So I'm going to do that as well. But I am very grateful to all of you for showing up here at 10:30 in the morning after a fantastic dance night on day 4 of this amazing Congress, after all the hangovers that you probably might be having from all the orange juice that you're on. So much sugar, I tell you. But I will try my best not to disappoint you all. So are we ready? Yes. So ladies and gentlemen, be prepared to get Madonized. No, just kidding. So let us first begin by understanding where we all stand. Get it? On the next few slides, I will be giving you guys some statements, and these statements are, to a certain extent, quite debatable. So don't overthink them. I just want your first immediate responses to these statements. The only thing I ask is if you agree and you're still lazy, just don't be seated, please. Just stand up and battle the morning laziness. Are we ready for this? So is it all clear? If you agree to the statement, you stand up. If you disagree, you sit down. You stay seated. Slowly, yes, slowly, okay. Right, so all of you are standing. Can you please leave the... No, I'm just kidding. Kidding. Brilliant. Stay standing for a second. For all the guys who are sitting down, can anyone give me a quick a very quick short sentence on why you disagree? Anyone? Yeah?
I think it's the cultures that different cultures of religion have different viewpoints. The culture of that religion, different countries which follow, you might get more
Brilliant.
country, a more peaceful country. So I think it's more about the culture which embraces the religion.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I think, yep.
At the same time, it can be both. Religion can bring people together. At the same time, it can push people apart.
Yeah, I think it's just like a knife, right? You can use a knife to chop vegetables, or you can use a knife to kill people. But I think, this is good. So I just want to go through these quickly because this is the theme of my presentation. But thank you for those fantastic answers, and I kind of understand and agree with all of you who are standing as well. Next one. Yeah, a few more standing. Oh, brilliant. So, religions can get outdated as they become old. Yeah? All right, I won't stay too long on this one. Let's get to the next one. Being religious equals to following culture plus customs plus traditions plus ritualistic practices. Yes. We're getting there. We're getting there. All right. I was born Zoroastrian, hence I am Zoroastrian. Yeah. Brilliant. Okay. I think you'll see where I'm going with this. And finally, for those not experts in propositional logic, the sign in the middle just means equivalent, which means if being Zoroastrian means you're Parsi or Iranian, and vice versa, being Parsi and Iranian, of course, makes you a Zoroastrian. So that's the equivalence sign in between. Okay, brilliant. So now, I love how the youth has now slowly evolved in their understanding of religion and culture and trying to differentiate between these two. And I did that back in New Zealand at the Congress, at the Youth Congress over there. And if I would have had these questions up back then, the number of people standing for these kind of questions would be a lot more. And again, these are still quite debatable, but I think from my presentation, I aim to address some of these issues. So for those of you who are sitting down, in fact, all of you who are sitting down, what makes you a Zoroastrian? Anyone? Sorry, yeah, absolutely.
To me, what makes being good Zoroastrian is just following the three principles of good thoughts, good words, good deeds, so that when you have those good thoughts, it would have a domino effect of speaking good and then doing good.
Absolutely. I mean, I need to thank Mabed Faribuz for giving such a fantastic introduction to my presentation. So if some of you who actually were there present in the morning just before my lecture got a lovely kind of a compliment to what I'll be speaking on as well. If you haven't, then you can, of course, get that on video. So now let us begin by first understanding this very question. I'll give you my answer for this. And also an answer that you probably might want, saying that why is a software engineer speaking on Zoroastrianism? So I was born and brought up in Mumbai, and for the greater part of my life, I was surrounded by Parsis. I grew up in a Parsi colony, and I studied in a school mostly managed and run by Parsis. So I had a very large number of Parsis in my class, and all 6 of us, we went to the canteen and would enjoy a very sumptuous dansak and a rather debatable prawn curry rice. But we also had religious classes at the ungodly hour of 8 a.m. every Wednesday morning, before the actual classes for everyone else started. And that's when I was sitting for this class, which was on my favorite topic of Persian history. And the teacher gave this quote from Herodotus in his histories. The Persian youths from their 5th year to the 20th year were instructed in 3 things: to ride a horse, to draw a bow, and to speak the truth. Okay. It is. Well, I am quite new to California. Is this normal? Okay. All right. I don't think, for the Californians here say it's normal, so you can carry on. Okay. So this was the very first quote that I came across. And I slowly began, through this class, understanding that the religion that I was made to believe growing up in Parsi culture, surrounded by Parsis, is not merely a set of cultural practices, just a set of cultural rituals, a set of cultural beliefs. But for the Persians, they actually practically used the Zoroastrian principles. So on the previous slide, what did riding a horse or learning the art of warfare have to do with speaking the truth? That was a fascinating question for me. What was the connection that these Persians made? And on the next slide, they talk about the Zoroastrian principle of sticking to the truth, and it being the most disgusting thing would be to say the lie or live a life of falsehood. So finally, I think Hanos Santok referred to this quote on the first day when we talked about environmentalism and how Zoroastrianism can solve climate change. And this was another thing that the Persians did back then, which was not to defile the rivers because another Zoroastrian principle. So these quotes made me realize that the religion was actually practically used in people's day-to-day lives. And this was in the early Achaemenian times, around the times of between Cyrus and Darius the Great. Are we fine so far? Yep. So at the height of its empire, the Persian Empire spanned 8 million square kilometers and spanned across the continents of Asia, Africa, and Europe. It was the largest medieval empire in the world. And I'm not sure many of us know this, but Zoroastrianism was the de facto religion of the state. I realize that our religion is not merely a set of cultural beliefs, as I mentioned previously. But what I believed and understood was that this religion is a way of life. So once again, a very good morning to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, and I hope I could have a similar impact to some of you sitting here today. Now, I'm in no way an academic scholar on the religion, and also I wanted to make this presentation more accessible to the youth and give a non-academic's perspective on religion. So if there are any academics in the house, my apologies for overly simplifying things and for probably making certain conclusions and simplifying concepts further. So Zain Dalal, in his speech at the NAZC in 2014, rightly mentioned that the previous generations have done an abysmal job at handing down the religion to us youth. The youth have disconnected from the religion because facts of the religion are not presented to young people so that they will choose Zoroastrianism. We are always given long lists of you should be doing this and you should be doing that, and even worse, you should not be doing this, not be doing that. So this makes the youth go from ignorance to indifference, from not knowing much about the religion, from not understanding what it means and how it can be practically used in your day-to-day life, to not actually wanting to care about it. Because our Zoroastrian center konjai, our Sunday prayer, like who will go to the Zoroastrian center early morning to learn a little bit more about this? So it didn't seep down in our homes in a natural way. So when I was growing up, I had a lot of questions like these. And when I became a priest, I was further asked even more questions which increased my curiosity. Now, why did mom and dad tell me that my sudre, or the vest that we wear, and the kasti, or the thread, are like my shield and my armor that will protect me wherever I go? Why do I sit through hour-long jashan ceremonies just so I can get my hands on the delicious malido? Why did I mug up my Navjot prayers and stand nervous in front of an audience that just kept coaxing me, Dikra, motte motte thi banje baddana samjhavu જોઈએ, or basically pray loudly because everyone needs to hear you pray. But the prayers didn't mean anything to me back then. And I think everyone here can relate to this. So as I grew up, I realized that man has an urge to give physical form to abstract concepts. So in a way, it is one of the reasons that lead to symbols like the Sudre and Kusti, which we humans can physically interact with, and rituals like the Jashan, which we can witness. So let's just get the Sudre out of the way. I think some of this might actually overlap and go very much hand in hand with the previous presentation. But Sudre is very simple. Sud, meaning good. Re, meaning the Raha or the path. So eventually, it's nothing but the good path. Now suddenly it makes sense to me, because by remembering to stay on the right path, after wearing the Sudre in the morning after my shower, I might actually decide to calm down and maybe let go of my anger or jealousy towards a work colleague. And on the way to work, I end up not taking any rash decisions, thereby preventing myself from what could have been a terrible accident. Just giving a very random example, slightly long-winded. But indirectly, the Sudre, or the act of wearing the Sudre and understanding what it means, was my armor. It actually physically helped me. So in this way, I found myself on a journey of uncovering facts about my religion, which helped me to connect with it to make it a way of life. I would now like to spark the same curiosity by using Zarathustra's teachings to bring out the best versions of ourselves. Is everyone all right so far? Teachings of Zarathustra that are essential in helping us all take good practical day-to-day decisions. Things as simple as not giving up on your guitar classes by using devotion. By not bullying some little kid on the football pitch showing poor use of strength. Or to bigger things and excelling in your chosen career by striving for perfection. Then you've got the very foundational principles of Zarathustra's message. We've all heard this. Truth and righteousness. These principles are as deep as they are wide. Initially, I thought it was just about speaking the truth. That's what you're taught growing up, right? Don't cheat in your exams, don't tell lies to your parents, so on and so forth, and the truth has a very simple meaning. But then when you grow up, you realize that you need to be true to your own self. You need to be true in your relationships, both personal and professional. You need to be truthful and righteous in all your business dealings, so on and so forth. And this is just the skimming of the meaning of truth in Zoroastrianism. This is the physical qualities of truth. Zoroastrianism does go a lot deeper in making truth and righteousness an umbrella term for the goodness that we all must strive to obtain in our life. But I won't go that deep into this. I want you all guys to be seated and not go anywhere. So the importance of knowing that each one of us needs to choose our good mind, to choose righteousness in all that you do. The importance of knowing that each one of us needs to feed our positive mentality and use it and recognize its presence within others. Seeking God, seeking the truth, seeking goodness within each one of us and understanding that it's within us. And finally, leading a life where you leave behind a legacy that helps people even after you pass away. That's immortality, not of the physical body, but of the goodness that you leave behind on this earth. We have been living the morals, we have been kind of piggybacking on all the good Parsis and Iranians, our ancestors who left behind a legacy, and wherever they went, they spread their happiness, and after they pass away, we still remember them because of all the schools, the hospitals, the infrastructure, the cities that they built, the industries that they built, so on and so forth. And this is the immortality that they leave behind. Anyone know where I'm going with this, of course? Yep. Anyone who would like to probably elaborate on the name of this doctrine? Or maybe give the name of this doctrine? Asha, yep. And what would these collectively be called as in a slightly later text? Yes, they are Misha Spentas. So this is the term that is used to kind of define or summarize this message of Zarathustra in the Gathas. Zarathustra himself doesn't call these Amisha Spentas. I'll just elaborate on what that means. Do you quickly want to go through the names of these in the Persian, in the Avestan and also Middle and Later Persian? Does anyone want to give me a few names? So starting from the top. Vahumana is the second one. So the first one would be? Anyone? Yeah, just say it out loud. Dadarmas or Spentamenu. So in the later, in Parsi, so Spentamenu becomes Hormuzd. Vahumana, as the good mind. Yep. Asha Vahishta. Yep. Shatravarya, Spentaramaiti, Horvatad, and Amritat. Right? Now, the words in the bold are actually the abstract qualities, and the words not in bold are the qualifiers, the adjectives that qualify the noun. So spenta, bounteous, holy, perfect, good, furthering. Vahu, good. Hashem Vahu, remember? Righteousness is good. Asha, Vahishta. Anyone call Vahishta here? Yep, so the best. Shatra, Varya, desirable. So on and so forth. So now these, in later Avestan texts, due to linguistic differences, Spentamenu became Hormuzd, Vahumana became Vamman, became Bamman, Asha Vahishta became Ardi Behesht, so on and so forth, and these will look very similar to the 7 days, the first 7 days of the Zoroastrian calendar month, if you have a calendar, Parsi calendar at your home, right? But essentially, what are these? These are the divine sparks, or the qualities of Mazda, the qualities of God, that each individual should strive to obtain in his or her daily life. This is exactly what we strive to obtain and symbolize in the Jashan ceremony. So when we go back home from the Jashan ceremony, we need to strive to obtain these qualities in everything that we do. And it's so easy, it's so practical, right? I already gave you a bunch of examples. Some is quite silly, like in football and in your guitar classes and your salsa lessons and things like that. But they apply to everything in your life. So these are then, first they are alluded to in the Gathas as being the protectors and associated with the 7 physical creations around us. So we know that as well. So there are these Amesha Spentas protect the 7 creations. But in a way, I think Zarathustra tells us that when we see these creations and we physically interact with these, we should strive to obtain the qualities that each creation stands for. But he doesn't give a long commentary on these creations, but this long commentary does definitely come in later Persian texts. And yes, these are known as the bounteous immortals or Amesha Spentas. But be careful. We humans, again, tend to personify everything. We eventually will make these the angels or the protectors and give them physical form in our heads. And it's nice to do that because humans can interact with physical beings, right? Humans can interact and see them. But essentially know that these are just good qualities in the Gathas. And you don't have to, I mean, you could be agnostic or atheist and still open the book of the Gathas, and it's a beautiful way of life for anyone to lead. It will still be helpful. So in the 238 verses of Zarathustra's Gathas, which we understood before, Asha appears the most, 157 times, thus symbolizing the supremacy of Asha, the supremacy of truth and righteousness in everything that we do. Only Vahumana, or good thinking, appears a comparable number of times, or 136 times. So now these qualities are essentially the divine sparks that we should now strive to obtain. So I hope the Amesha painters and their practical significance is now clear, right? You can interpret them and use them in many ways. You can start from the top, go down, by saying that in anything that you want to do, you want to use the positive mentality to begin a task, stay on the path of good wisdom and good thinking, eventually leading to a path of truth and righteousness. That path gives you the strength that should be used for constructive purposes, never for destructive ones, hence desirable. Approach any task with devotion and love will eventually lead to perfection and wholeness in that task, and that task will eventually have benefits that will last even beyond its initial motives, right? All practical, again, very broken down, something that you can use in your day-to-day life. So what else do the Gathas talk about? Let me go through the quote first. Zarathustra was the greatest of all the pioneer prophets who showed the path of freedom to men, the freedom of moral choice, the freedom from blind obedience to unmeaning injunctions, freedom from the multiplicity of shrines which draw our worship away from the single-minded chastity of devotion, Almighty. He further adds, to most of us it sounds like a truism today when we are told that the moral goodness of a deed comes from the goodness of intention, right? People say, why do I need to follow religion which just says, just follow good thoughts, words, and deeds? But this was not logic back then. It is a truth which once came to a man like a revelation of light in the darkness and has not yet reached all the obscure corners of humanity. Now I can simply read out this entire article, but can anyone tell me who this person is? Yeah. Thank you. So Rabindranath Tagore, one of the most well-known Indian poets, playwrights, philosophers, free thinkers, scholars on religion. He has written a beautiful foreword to a great scholar's translation of the Gathas. I urge you to put this on your to-do list and just read the foreword at least, if you weren't to read the entire book, because that will be the most beautiful summary of the Gathas that I have read so far. So now there are several paragraphs in the Gathas which can be directly applied to our lives. I'll give you one more. Clear is this to all? The man of wisdom as to the man who carefully thinks. He who upholds truth with all the might of his power, he who upholds truth the utmost in his word and deed, he indeed is your most valuable helper, O Mazda Ahura. Now, you can personify Mazda Ahura as the Lord of wisdom, as the wise Lord, or you can depersonify it to wisdom itself, because the message came from wisdom to Zarathustra. So this is the purpose of life, of following a path of good thoughts, words, and deeds, which Zarathustra tells you to do in your day-to-day life. How applicable is this? And this was, again, written 3,500 years ago. So if you want a really inspiring talk on the Gathas, the one before this was beautiful. Zain Dalal's speech, which I will give you a link to on YouTube, is a great place to start as well. For in summary, Zarathustra preaches religious freedom, rational thinking when exercising your free will. But know that with freedom comes. Thank you. So all these three things are mentioned in the Gathas, along with the various other things that were referred to in the previous presentation. So you have religious freedom, so religious freedom we will come to. Rational thinking is what we're doing next, and taking responsibility is something that I'll leave to you guys. Now, I am a software engineer. So when I read the Gathas, I thought, is there a way I can devise a step-by-step algorithm, a step-by-step instruction list on how I could best apply the teachings of Zarathustra in anything and everything that I have to do, in taking any decision in my life. And this is the very simple yet profound algorithm that I could come up with. And this is coming from 3 paragraphs in the Gathas, which I will not read out anymore. You need to first, before taking any decision, approach that decision with an unbiased mind, but seek wisdom. try to put and collect all the available facts to you and put them in front of you. Yeah? So far, so good. Now, you would think that generally when you decide on things in life, whether you want to go for lunch or not, whether you want to go for salsa later in the day or not, whether you should be studying for your exams or not, something so on and so forth, all these silly decisions to the big decisions in life. You put all of these, you seek wisdom and you seek the truth, put all the facts in front of you, but now you think that you'd be making that choice on your own, right? But the Gathas actually say that it's the supremacy of truth. So truth by its own power, that power is not yours, will instruct your conscience, your inner voice, to do what is right. Now it's up to you whether you choose to listen to that voice or not, but this is it. The Gathas are so beautiful because it kind of tells you how you can decide on things, how you can choose on things without actually deciding for yourself, because truth itself will set you free. So anyways, Rabindranath Tagore further adds that there are men we still see around us who fearfully follow, hoping thereby to gain merit, the path of blind formalisms which have no living moral source in the mind. Now, this will make us understand the greatness of Zarathushtra. So speaking of gaining merit, let me come to the prayer that we all probably learn first. What's that prayer? What does it mean? Can anyone give me a quick gist? Yep. So speak the truth, yep. So, go on. Thank you. So, righteousness is good, yes. It is the absolute best. It is happiness. But happiness is to that person who is righteous, not for personal gain, not for benefits, not for an OBE, not for anything or the other, but for the sake of goodness itself, for the sake of righteousness. Just simple and beautiful. Now, there are a few other similar translations, slightly differing in their meaning, but more or less, I like to take translations which I can practically use in my day-to-day life. And I think that's one good way of reading a few different things and then making your own conclusions and seeing what helps you to be a better person. The next prayer does anyone know the other name for this prayer? Yatha, the most sacred of all Zoroastrian verses. Now, this prayer is again very cryptic and has quite a few different translations. But let's just very quickly use it, because people who wrote commentaries on this prayer back in the past said that this prayer was recited by Ahura Mazda himself to create the universe. And now again, I'm a student of science, right? So I'll challenge everything. Like, how did that happen? But then, in a way, the meaning of the prayer itself sums up how man can interact and live in this universe in the best possible way. So I'm using this translation that says, just as the righteous creator of the world is powerful, or just as the spiritual world is powerful, in the same way any person on the physical world is powerful according to his or her own righteousness. So basically this talks about the spiritual world and the physical world, which I'll come to in a second. And why that's practical, because I need to break down everything that we see on the slides into practical Zoroastrianism, right? The gift of the good mind, the gift of wisdom, is to that person who follows wisdom. Now, this is a lovely, vicious cycle, but not a vicious cycle, it's a very positive cycle. If you do good, you get the strength to do more good. Yeah? It's a nice, brilliant cycle. And using that strength that you receive, you need to help your less fortunate brethren. How beautiful is this? It sums up pretty much how every man should live in accordance with the universe. So I won't go any further on this one. But considering we all recite this every day, hopefully, I turned to the Kemna Mazda and I was quite amazed once again. Essentially, it translates to a question. Who, O Mazda? And the prayer begins. The reciter asks, Who, O Mazda, shall grant protection unto me when any evil person glares at me with an intention of doing harm? As all poetry and prayer, let's not take this literally and make a list of all the evil people in your head right now. When you read a few more translations as well as metaphorical explanations and ponder a bit, you realize this evil person may translate to an actual evil person or merely an evil thought, word, or deed that might harm me, both coming from someone else or from someone within me. My own silly actions are enough to cause me harm, right? So you extend the meaning, and that's what your English teacher did when she explained to you ancient poetry, right? Who, O Master, will grant protection to my household happiness and peace of mind? Who shall grant protection? And do you evoke that thought in my mind so that I may get courage and strength in executing my work? Do you declare to me the knowledge I need of the religion by which righteousness shall increase? Do you reveal clearly to me a wise leader? So now I can't imagine a day of my life when these questions would not make sense to me, whether it be the times I feared giving exams as a child to a fear of failure, or the fear of going to a foreign country and settling abroad. I never felt lonely when reciting it, even on the days I needed surgery away from home. Because in a sense, God, or wisdom, along with my conscience within me, has an ability to answer these questions every single time I ask them. Who will protect me? My Lord or wisdom will protect me. My own conscience will protect me. Does this make sense? So that is why it further goes on to say, let my conscience, or sarosh, the spirit of intelligence, come to my aid through the agent of wisdom. So let my conscience and my wisdom help me in taking all the good decisions for that day. So it's brilliant, right? And then it further goes on to say a few more things. All right. So who do you think first asked these questions? Where are these questions from?
I think the questions come from yourself on how your beliefs and just asking more or less for wisdom on
Yep.
your life path.
Absolutely. So the questions are obviously of the reciters. Who recited these questions, or who asked them for the very first time? Zarathushtra. Because all of these paragraphs that I gave you a translation of, the Kemna Mazda, come from the Gathas itself. So this is the best part, because imagine having the same conversation as he did, and that to daily is even more consoling to everyone. Now, when I think it out in my head in English while reciting it in its original language, it becomes my own conversation with wisdom. It becomes my own conversation with God. So, when I was reading the meaning of the Kemna Mazda, there was a strong change in tone towards the end of the prayer. So initially, the reciter is asking many questions, humbly seeking for Aura Mazda's protection, right? Now suddenly we say, Nase Devi Druksh, Nase Devo Chitre, Nase Devo Frakarashte. As it may the devil's spawn and the wicked person, including the follower of the devil's lord, disappear utterly, vanish, and entirely perish in the north. And I was taken aback. Was this sense of directionality added into the prayer? Why the north? What's wrong with the north? It did coincide, I remember, my grandmother telling me not to pray facing the north. So on a bit of research, I realized that for the Iranians of the time, the cold winds blew from the north, and winter used to set in from the north as well. So also according to another source, the enemies used to invade Iran from the north. So it was rightly labeled as the home of the demons. Sorry, Canada. So that's where we put the devil. And in some of our other litanies or niyashes, the prayers that we recite in praise, I think if you saw the Jashan ceremony at the first day, Did you see all the praise turn and pray facing the south for the last paragraph of the Atashni? Yeah? Why was that now? Because suddenly the south became the land of the heavens. In the northern hemisphere, when the sun goes from east to west, it appears to travel via the south. So when you're standing, it will appear traveling via the south. So also you pray facing the sun generally during the day. So the south just became the land of the heavens in an interpretation and a practice way. But this is not very much overlapping with where evil and good reside in the Gathas. So if I were to be in a scenario, I wouldn't bother too much about directionality personally. And it was no surprise to me when I read that this is the only paragraph in the Kemna Mazda which comes from the Vandidad, the Videvdad, or the law against the demons. Now it is a book also considered a Zoroastrian text, but it is unclear as to when it was written, but most scholars believe it to be written at least 700 years after the Prophet, after the times of Zarathushtra. The remaining portions of the Kemna Mazda are all from the Gathas. So on doing a bit of reading, one can see another difference between the same concept in the Gathas and the later Avastan periods, or the Vandidad, which I've already mentioned right now. So God or Ahura Mazda has a dual opposite called Ariman, and they are personified as separate entities, right? However, in the olden Avastan period of the Gathas, the concept is that we give form to evil by choosing to do wrong, right? That's just beautiful. Good and evil are spoken of as being mainus. What is a mainu? Something to do with the mind, mentality, and spirit. When the mainu is angra, it is said to be destructive, inhibitive, malign. So a manifestation of that can be anger. Now I found this quite brilliant and pure because it is extremely scientific and practical. And quite beautifully, the place or abode of this spirit is not the north. It's not a specific location. But where do you think this location of good and evil reside? Within yourself, within your mind. In man's worst thinking, does Angra Maini reside, and in man's best thinking, Spenta. Now, this is a very practical concept taught 3,500 years ago, which makes me in charge of choosing good over evil as much as I possibly can. Is this, again, practical enough? So, the key to destruction of evil is making the right choices. Now, this is why it is beneficial to know the origins of a prayer when it was written, and also try to get into the mind of the person who wrote it. And generally, you will find these in the footnotes, generally, when you're going through these prayers. So, because if you call yourself a Zoroastrian, you should believe in the philosophy of Zarathustra first, before you believe in the commentary on that philosophy written by some priest who might have come afterwards. Does everyone agree with me on this? Yeah? So you can, of course, choose to follow all the commentaries as well, and then just read everything and try to understand everything. But as a Zoroastrian, you cannot superimpose what comes afterwards to what is technically attributed to the Prophet himself. So we now know that it is important to differentiate the message of Zarathustra as in the Gathas and the way that philosophy has been interpreted and practiced over 3,500 years. Now, the teachings of the Gathas have amazingly stood the test of time and location. They are not outdated, as we have seen already. Whether someone were to read the verses of the Gathas 3,500 years ago, today, or maybe on some habitable planet 3,500 years from now, it will still be bringing peace and happiness to the person who follows them. But after reading a lot of Persian and Indo-Iranian history from various sources, you will realize the vast differences in which Zoroastrianism was practiced and what was considered right or wrong. So we've already established that the Gathas are independent of time, location, and of context as well. Right? So you can take them anywhere with you. So let's quickly now go through the remaining two prayers. Now this prayer, the Kemna Mazda is the only prayer, the only Kasti prayer, I would say, that has paragraphs directly from the Gathas. This prayer is in a more modern Iranian language called Parsi. And do you know this is the prayer that we recite when we tie the Kasti, right? So prayers are actually brilliant if you understand them, because not only will you benefit from the vibrations created by prayer, but you will also be able to apply the practical day-to-day, practical meaning in your day-to-day life. So, in a gist, this prayer is a bunch of affirmations. You affirm to stay away from all kinds of negative people. Yep. So deceivers, distorters of truth, expounders of falsehood, tyrants, impious people, wicked rulers. Again, hold your horses. Do not make a list of these people in your mind once again. So at my first reading, our human nature tends to do this. But here the list of people again could metaphorically refer to the qualities being personified. Qualities whereby one hears but pretends not to hear, when one sees but pretends not to see. Isn't that falsehood? I realized I was the person who many times could see, but suppressed my conscience enough to pretend not to see. How many of us here have done that? Yeah? We've all made foolish decisions in our life, sometimes knowingly. YOLO, right? So, if YOLO went wrong, then we come to this paragraph. Another interesting part of this prayer is where we try to rectify our life by affirming to stay away from what? Easy. Wicked thoughts, wicked words, wicked deeds. Let's not bang the cliché. But most importantly, what are we trying to do here? We are trying to convert these into good thoughts, words, and deeds. It's not just a prayer of repentance saying, forgive me for this. It's actually a prayer where you try to affirm that you will change or improve yourself and just develop personally. So, you make then two loops with your Kasti. One signifying the material world we live in, which is itself difficult to comprehend, and the other, a spiritual world. Now, how is this bit practical? God's sake. We all go through several troubled phases where we may lose a loved one, a pet, where we may fail miserably at different levels, and when we think we have hit rock bottom. Those are days where absolutely everything goes wrong, right? This is the time these two loops remind us, remarkably, that these are physical world problems. These are temporal. It helps you to calm down a bit and maintain your equilibrium, because you realize that being in a physical world, you are subject to pleasure and pain, and without one, the other is meaningless. Right? So again, this bit is quite practical as well. Eventually, if you try to find meaning, you can just use these things in your day-to-day life very easily. We have knots. I think this was explained in the previous session. A commitment and resolution towards truth and righteousness, right? So prayers strengthen your will to do what is right. It is difficult for most of us to recite something again and again and then immediately do something quite the opposite. Do we all agree to that? No, we don't. Because in the Zoroastrian creed, in the Jasmi Avange Mazda prayer, we say, Jasami Avange Mazda, O wisdom, do come to my aid. Or, just notice how I constantly dehumanize the Lord into what he stands for, right? So this is the Lord of wisdom, and I translate it to wisdom. Notice how I constantly dehumanize. But even if one was not to believe in a God, one still can gain everything from these prayers because of the righteous superlative qualities that God stands for. So the prayer then proclaims the reciter to be an ardent follower in the worship of wisdom, as prophesied by Zarathushtra. And then you say things like, I praise the true conceived thought, the true spoken word, and the well-done deed. Beautiful. You then go on to say, I praise this religion because it is quarrel-removing, weapon-lowering, self-dedicating, and holy. Kaitwadatam. Nidasanaitishem Faraspayok Hedram. Now, this made me suddenly think, do our elders actually understand these prayers? Because the last time I checked, we just love to create one organization after another, even in the smallest of places with the smallest of Parsis around, and then just disagree on everything, even though our messages and our goals overlap. So as the youth, I urge you all to, come back in a way to bring back these organizations together to undo what our forefathers might have not done very well, and to take religion forward in a united way so that there are no labels anymore, right? Well, I hope you realize how meaningful the kasti is now, right? As a priest, when I was becoming a priest, I had to do my kasti approximately between 20 to 30 times a day. And I thought that was insane. It was madness. But if you actually understand this, now you realize why your parents told you maybe do a kasti in the morning as soon as you get up and do a kasti before sleeping in the night. Because if you translate all of this in English in your head, you will relate these things to small experiences at that point in your life. Whether you're going through a breakup, or whether you're going through a stressful period in your exams, or whether you're going through a stressful period at work, so on and so forth, it suddenly just brings context. The prayers make sense. So once the religion starts helping us to be better individuals, we can start to choose the religion for ourselves. And I'm not saying this, but this matters. Zarathushtra clearly states in the famous Yasna 32, choose your creed. Hear you all with your ears these best teachings, but ponder over them first with your bright intellect. Reflect upon them with your illuminated judgment. Let each individual choose for himself his own creed, his own way of life. With that freedom of choice each must have before great events. Oh, you all, be awake to these announcements or teachings. Now, how beautiful is this? Because Zain Dalal pointed out that this is a prophet who said, don't take my word for it, right? Understand these teachings, decipher the meanings of all these prayers, and then if they can apply to you, if they make sense to you, then why not follow them? Why throw it all away, right? Why be indifferent? So it directly and indirectly solves many of our current issues. Choosing your religion in this way, you will not take Zoroastrianism for granted just because you were born of Zoroastrian parents, or because you had your Navjot and Sudripushi ceremony done and have 1,000 embarrassing pictures of you. It teaches us to individually ponder over the teachings of our Prophet using wisdom, which means no forcing your views on others, right? So you can't do that, no one else can do that. And by doing so, we make our own picture of religion something personal, something meaningful to us. And you know what the best part is? If you choose your religion, you will keep it. And this is the presentation that I've been referring to for a while. Again, put this on your to-do list. It's the best 50 minutes that you will spend on YouTube. Maybe before or after your cat videos. Zain Dalal rightly mentions in this presentation that he delivered at the North American Zoroastrian Congress in 2014. But I can actually further add, not only will you keep this forever, but you will be happily spreading the message and pass it on to your children so that they will choose Zoroastrianism in a way that will benefit them. So if you can't understand these prayers and learn it for yourself, then how can you pass it on to your children? And now you can't blame your parents saying that Manakoya Sikhavyune, no one taught me the meanings of the Navjot prayers. You have these congresses, you have avasta.org, you have a lot of information which is very accessible. Just read enough so you can actually practically use Zoroastrianism and choose it, right? So today we fear that our minority ethnic groups that follow Zoroastrianism in one way or the other, for example, the Parsis of India, will fade away in the near future. So that is why the government of India has brought out a financial scheme to help fertility programs and encourage early marriage, etc., so that the Parsi race can try to preserve their identity and rich cultural heritage, right? So this scheme is called Geo-Parsi, or Long Live the Parsi. It includes a massive ad campaign with some really humorous ads, right? One's for the guys, one's for the ladies. For people who can't read, isn't it time you broke up with your mom, is what's being said to the guy. And on the next picture it says, will your boyfriend ever be as successful as Ratan Tata? Don't worry about it, because who are you to judge? Nicole Kidman. These were some of the old ads, and they have a few new ads with some of my friends on it as well. So the akuri didn't quite agree with me, but by God do you. So akuri is just a breakfast dish, eggs, scrambled eggs with onions, tomatoes, garlic, spices, and the recipe you can grab from me later. And the other slogan is just saying, you're sweet as lagan no custard. I think caramelized custard. Speaking of lagans, will you marry me? They're actually launching an app. So if the Congress doesn't work out, guys, they're launching an app in 5 to 6 days. But this is not what I came to tell you. What I personally fear that the most is that the teachings of our prophet Zarathushtra, which most of us Parsis and Iranis and other Zoroastrians all over the world forget to understand and use, will simply end up as a gallery in the British Museum. Not helping people in life. However, what gives me confidence is that you guys have come here early in the morning to hear this talk. So if the philosophy of Zarathustra has helped mankind and the entire world for 3,500 years, I have absolute faith that it will undoubtedly help each one of us sitting here today if we embrace it as the way of life it truly is. Atharjamya yatha afrinami. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. I had to remove a lot of funny memes from my presentation. Unfortunately, if I had to put in some of the content, it had to be slightly boring, so my apologies if anyone found this a little too academic, but I tried my best. But anyone having any questions? Yeah? Any thoughts or comments? Yep.
Yeah, I had a question. So firstly, thank you very much for the excellent talk. My question was...
I'll probably repeat, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for your talk. I was wondering about how you had said that the Jasmya Vange Mazda prayer has the meaning of the religion being weapon lowering and quarrel removing, and how do we reconcile that with all the imperial conquests of the Persian Empire?
Right, so that's a very good question, and probably the only question I will be able to take at this time. But just as we were told, and just as maybe I might have given you that impression as well, that the Persian Empire was not built on love and peace, right? So we were definitely warriors, and while the Persians did follow some teachings of Zoroastrianism within their way of life, they definitely did not follow all principles of the Gathas. But they did follow certain variations of Zoroastrianism, and the Gathas as we know them today and have translated them today were not actually present back then. So what I mean is that the translations of the Gathas were quite modern, that we referred to. So more scholarly works on the Gathas were done later on. So they did follow certain forms of Zoroastrianism, but just as all individuals, it's so hard, it's so easy to come here and talk on Zoroastrianism, but how difficult is it to follow Zoroastrianism? So yes, definitely, the Persians weren't all great. If you actually read Persian history, you'll realize that we were also killing some Christians at a particular time because they didn't convert to Zoroastrianism, and so on and so forth. So if people gave you that everyone was lovely, yes, the Achaemenian kings were brilliant. Cyrus, Darius, some of them, Darius did rule justly and wisely and use Zoroastrian teachings in his day-to-day ruling. But I absolutely agree. Throughout the centuries, the followers of Zoroastrianism haven't really, I mean, this is what religion is, right? It tries to keep you on the right path, but it doesn't really magically make all of us follow the right path naturally. This is the constant battle that we have to choose for ourselves. So I don't know if we can actually reconcile what the Persians did back then, but at least we can change our own future and how we behave in our future life. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah, thank you. Lovely. Thank you once again. So thank you very much.
Thank you once again, Jimmy, for a great presentation.
Brilliant.
Here you go.
Thank you very much.
And I'm sure you'll be around and outside,
Yes,
so if
absolutely.
you have any further questions, you can go ahead and find
Any
us.
intellectual conversations on the cruise night? Definitely.
Thank you once again.
Thank you very much.